Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Is anyone really surprised by this? Is anyone really surprised that as Joe Biden's approval rating continues to tank, and as Democrats brace for a serious election loss in about 2 months and some change here in the midterms, that all of a sudden Joe Biden is pushing forward student loan cancellation in a desperate last-ditch effort attempt to essentially buy votes in the 9th inning? Of course you're not surprised. This is what Democrats do. They don't actually make changes to the system that benefit all Americans and create a higher standard of living. They're not creating a system where you yourself can thrive. They're not signing into law a good policy that allows you to govern your own life and allows you to thrive instead of survive. They do absolutely nothing good for you. They keep making your life worse, making life more expensive, shipping your jobs overseas and taking your tax dollars and sending it to Ukraine. And then right before an election, they somehow win a good chunk of voters over by promising free crap. It was a big part of Joe Biden's 2020 campaign, and it's no surprise that nothing has changed headed into 2022. Desperate times call for desperate measures, and when Democrats get desperate, they spend your money and pretend as if they're doing something productive for society. We gotta talk about student loan forgiveness and why it's just terrible policy. We've got some stuff to get into, friends, so let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so here's the report. Biden to unveil long-awaited student debt relief measures on Wednesday. President Joe Biden will make his long-awaited announcement on student debt relief this week, and yet some of the biggest drivers behind the forgiveness plan will be left disappointed. Biden plans to unveil his approach Wednesday, according to people familiar with the timing. For several months, he's been weighing forgiving $10,000 per borrower in student debt and capping the relief at incomes of $125,000 to $150,000 a year. But advocates, including progressive lawmakers, civil rights groups, and labor leaders, have pressured the White House to forgive higher debt loads, arguing that they are disproportionately carried by black or lower income students. These leaders and groups, including the NAACP, would like Biden to forgive $50,000 per borrower. If the rumors are true, we've got a problem, and tragically, we've experienced this so many times before, NAACP President Derek Johnson said in a statement on Tuesday. This is not how you treat black voters who turned out in record numbers and provided 90% of their vote to once again save democracy in 2020. I mean, I find the premise of that sentence so insulting, as if the black vote is entirely predicated off of getting free stuff from the government. And also, the outrage is completely ridiculous. The Biden administration is offering $10,000 in student loan forgiveness, and these activist groups are outraged because apparently it's not enough. They want $50,000. And here's where it gets really crazy. $10,000 to $50,000 in student loan forgiveness, Bloomberg estimates is going to cost the American taxpayer between $300 billion to $980 billion over 10 years, depending on the scope an analysis released on Tuesday found. Here we go again, folks. In deeply inflationary times, which by the way, mark my words, we are still not done with, Joe Biden continues to send billions of dollars to Ukraine. They just passed an inflationary bill and tax hike on corporations, and now he's presenting a new plan of student loan forgiveness, which is going to cost hundreds of billions of dollars. It's going to cost you hundreds of billions of dollars to pay for someone else's school. Absurd. Not only is the premise of student loan forgiveness completely crazy, but yet again, the timing of this decision could not be worse. We're most likely about to head into a winter energy crisis. It's very likely that inflation remains extremely high even in 2023, and apparently now's the perfect time to spend hundreds of billions of taxpayer dollars, which the American government cannot afford to spend. That's crazy. You wonder why you can't afford to pay off your student loans in the first place. Well, this type of policy is exactly why. The solution to the student debt crisis, as it's known, isn't spending more money. The solution is fixing the problem. You know what the real problems are in this student debt crisis? Predatory colleges and universities. Let's just Google really quick. Harvard University endowment. Assets under management, $53.2 billion. Harvard is a multi-billion-dollar operation, and Harvard's value increased by over $10 billion in fiscal year 2021. It's a racket. It's also a private university. You don't have to go to Harvard, but if you choose to go to Harvard and you choose to put yourself in debt to go to Harvard, and then you can't pay off that debt because you're basically basically useless and have no life skills, how does it then become the government's responsibility, or regular working class people who didn't go to university and chose to pursue a hands-on career or possibly start their own business and create their own entrepreneurial journey, how is it then their responsibility to pay your debt and your bad decision-making skills? That's completely crazy. I mean, that is peak entitlement. Joe Biden isn't fixing the college racket scam. Colleges and universities offering useless degrees for hundreds of thousands of dollars and ill-preparing their student body for real life. He's merely putting a band-aid on the problem and pretending as if he's doing something of significance. $10,000 in student loan forgiveness. It's not money in your pocket, it's honestly nothing. You're still making the payments. He might have helped you a little bit in the long run, but he still hasn't fixed the actual problem. The problem is these universities are predatory, and so are the loans in the way that they're marketed. The whole premise or the whole idea that you have to go to college or you're going to be a failure, manipulating the minds of young kids to go deep into debt because that's the only way that they're going to start off their life, is the biggest racket on the planet. You know what's the best way to start your life? With zero debt and just accumulating assets and net worth and buying a home. I mean, possibly the two worst things that you could do are live in California or live in New York, go to a fancy college, get a useless degree, and pay $5,000 a month in rent and forever be poor, forever be in absolute crushing debt because you've made terrible decisions with your life and you fell for the college racket scam. Now you're writing for Vox, you're 45 years old, you're being crushed by debt, and you're still part of the renter class and you don't own a home. And at the same time, the American government is spending billions of dollars abroad in foreign nations, spending hundreds of billions of dollars on illegal immigrants, and shipping your jobs overseas. Not to mention, Democrats keep promising you freebies and free money and stimulus checks and college debt forgiveness, which feels really good in the moment. I mean, oh, I got a little stimmy check. I'm gonna go buy myself a PlayStation 5. I'm gonna go buy some cryptocurrencies. I'm gonna go buy a car that I can't afford. Fast forward 2 years later, housing is 2 times more expensive. Groceries are becoming completely unaffordable. The world economy enters an affordability crisis, and you're sitting there wondering, oh well, what could have possibly caused this? And now I need more money from the government because I'm poorer than I was before. Oh, it must be Donald Trump's fault. You are being played. Government thrives when the populace is uneducated and dependent. That's exactly what Democrats thrive on. If you were armed with the facts, if you were armed with the fact that you could retire a millionaire off a $30, $40, or $50,000 a year salary, then you'd wake up and realize that actually you don't need the government. People tell me I'm crazy when I say that, but it's true. Let's say you decide not to go to college. Automatically, you start off without any student loans. You're not $100,000 deep in student loan debt or paying interest payments. Let's say at 16 years old, you work little side jobs, you save maybe $10,000, $20,000 by the time you're 18. At 18, you go full time. You start working, and 12 years later, by the time you're 30, you've made maybe $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year on average throughout that entire period. I mean, it's not exactly hard to do if you're actually working hard and getting stuff done. I mean, for Pete's sakes, you can make $40,000, $50,000 a year, sometimes even more, doing a little landscaping job, knocking on people's doors and mowing their lawn. And let's say in that time frame, I mean, that's 12 years, you didn't have kids out of wedlock, you waited till your 30s to start a family, and you lived a very humble life, maybe even still living at home, or having multiple roommates, sharing a home, and having a very low rent. You could stash away tons of money. You could get a good relationship with the bank and have a decent credit score, and the bank's gonna loan you 80% on any real estate ventures that you want to do forward. You could put a good amount of money into your retirement, stash your money away, it's gonna work for you, it's gonna gather and accumulate value over the years. You buy real estate, you buy stocks, you continue to work, you don't have debt, and you start a family a little bit later in your life when you're ready financially to do so. People were armed with that information. Instead of all of their bad decisions being enabled and subsidized by the government, people would realize that they're not as poor as they think they are. If the government stopped taxing the middle class into oblivion, you might be able to actually save for your future. But of course, instead of arming people with basic financial knowledge and financial competence, what it means to be financially free, they'd rather keep you dumb, dependent, so they can continue to manipulate you for your vote. Vote for us and we're going to give you all kinds of free stuff because we know life is so difficult. and then you keep getting more poor and more poor. You keep falling further and further and further behind, while people who actually get it, people who understand, continue to thrive. I meet so many people, in fact, I'm one of them. I have tons of friends. I know so many people who didn't buy into the college scam, started their lives without any debt, started businesses, and are thriving today. And you know what? I was doing the exact same thing before I started this YouTube channel. And the idea that people who did everything right, that people who didn't go into debt, have to now take on other people's debt and pay it off. And the idea that people who worked their behinds off and sacrificed for their entire adult lives to save as much money as possible to send their kids to school and to pay their tuitions entirely, the idea that they now have to subsidize your student loans because you wanted to get a gender studies degree from Harvard and be a professional useless person, it's a complete disgrace. Student loans shouldn't be offered to anyone unless that field is actually productive. Unless you're trying to become a doctor, a lawyer, an architect, you shouldn't even be able to get student loans. In fact, you probably shouldn't even go to school, honestly, for 95% of the jobs out there. You don't need a university degree to end up being a car salesman. And even to the extent of you don't need to go to school to become a software engineer. There's absolutely a problem when it comes to student loans, when it comes to the cost of colleges. I mean, these universities are making billions upon billions of dollars. There is absolutely a systemic problem with people thinking that they have to get a university degree or they won't be able to exist in modern day society. But the solution isn't throwing taxpayer dollars at the problem. The problem is actually fixing the broken system. The problem is incentivizing work, productivity, and pragmatic paths through life. You know, there's currently a housing crisis. Maybe if more people were getting involved in construction and labor-intensive work, maybe if there wasn't such stigma over blue-collar jobs and working with your hands, it'd be a good thing. And the funniest part, the most ironic part, is in the end, a lot of these guys working blue-collar jobs, the guys that are building homes, the plumbers, the electricians, those guys start off their lives with no debt. They make a decent amount of money, they save a lot of money, they live in areas that aren't super expensive, they could buy a home, for Pete's sakes, they can build their own home, they could buy a car, they can raise their family, send their kids to school. And in a lot of cases, these guys save a lot of money, they work in real estate, they work in homes and whatnot, and they end up buying real estate and becoming landlords, in some cases property managers or property developers, and they do a whole lot better than the useless MacBook Air, Starbucks, New Yorker who's overly educated, working at Vox, making $10,000 a year, and begging that construction guy, that blue-collar worker guy, to pay off their student loans because they made bad decisions in their lives. I don't know, you guys get it. I'm just going on a rant at this point. I basically skipped all the content that I had for this video. I had a bunch of articles and other things I wanted to cover, and instead I went on a monologue about financial freedom and stuff, but hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I should probably just end the video here. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. I'm gonna get back to work. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.